early days of my life were living in North Bourne, near the corner of near the corner of Bourne and Belmore Roads. Went to North Bourne Primary School. In those days, there was no such thing as Sunday footy for all the kids. It was all the primary schools used to have their own little footy team, and you'd have a little district and play all the ones around us, which was like Greythorn and Burundara and Kew, and so consequently, lots of players we used to play against in those days. In those, grade 6, grade 5, and grade 6 ended up being players we would play against in suburban Melbourne later on. Went to Carey in Form 1 or Year 7, and played cricket and footy like most kids did in those days, and just really loved my footy, loved playing the forward line, loved kicking goals. Thought that's what it was all about. Never was a fast mover, but I have pretty big hands, and I was a very good kick for goals, so it seemed to get me through to different things. And early on, when I was in grade 4 in primary school, I ran into a car on my push bike and broke my right tibia. In those days, you used to have a cast that went from your foot nearly to your groin just to fix your tibia, so consequently couldn't kick the footy in the winter, and it had a little stump thing on the bottom of the cast, so you could actually stand and I could kick with my left foot. So I gradually learnt over that period to actually kick with my left foot, and by the time I got out of the cast and started kicking again, I found I could just kick with my left or my right. And I think that's pretty much one of the reasons why I actually played a couple of games, was I had no hesitation to just go on my left foot, because I could just kick it just as well. After school, I was a pretty late developer. Would have had absolutely no chance trying to get into play senior footy for Hawthorn at 18, 19, and was at Old Carey in B grade in the amateurs, and we had an ex-Hawthorn player, John Duncho, was our coach, and we were doing pretty well in that. 2 or 3 years there, I think it was on my 3rd year there, that we weren't going to make the finals, and my brother had started playing then too after he'd left school, and I think Hawthorn were pretty keen about getting my brother, and Dad said, oh well, you can get Rob down to training and play a couple of games in the reserves if you take Michael as well. Unbeknown to me, he said this. So suddenly we were, I think it was about 3 games to go in the 1975 season, and we got invited down to training, and then I don't know how the permits worked in those days, but because we were playing as an amateur, we just seemed to be able to just sign a form and play. So first game ever was down at Collingwood at Princess, what do you call it? Not Princess Park, the Collingwood grounds in what's the Collingwood ground called? Victoria Park, yeah, Victoria Park. Wet day. The sort of players I had playing with me that day were Jeff Ablett, Peter Crimmins. It was his sort of like comeback game to try and show that he was fit enough to play in the senior team. So he was playing, and he was one of the ones that helped actually get Rob and I to go down to Hawthorn. And wet day, I think I kicked a few goals, can't remember how many, and it was an eye-opener to walk up the races and have the Collingwood faithful women with no teeth trying to spit at you and stick their umbrellas through the mesh. I mean, I think it was Len Pett said to me, when you're walking up the race, stay right dead in the middle because it's too dangerous on the edges. And I couldn't understand what he was talking about until we actually walked up the middle, and people trying to stab you with umbrellas, unbelievable. Then the next week, I think we played. It's a home game, so we must have played at Princess Park against Essendon. Nice day this time, and played pretty well. I think I kicked 5, 6 or 7 goals or something. Then it was the finals, and because we won those last couple of games in the reserves made the finals. It was the final 5 in those days, so the senior team, even though they lost the last 3 games, finished on top of the ladder still, so they had a rest. and we all went out to Waverley to play Melbourne in the elimination final. And we had 3 Cooks playing that day. Brian Cooke was in the centre, who's the CEO of Geelong now, and my brother Rob was at centre half forward and I was at full forward, and I was playing on Diamond Jim Tilbrook, who people might remember was a South Australian recruit to Melbourne and was going to make Melbourne win about 10 premierships in a row or something, and he had got himself down in the reserve, so I managed to kick 7 goals on him. And I think my brother kicked about 5 and Brian Cooke kicked about 3 or 4, so we ended up with, I don't know, 16 or 17 goals between the 3 of us. Won the match and therefore progressed in the finals. And then next week at training, just training really to play in the reserves match again, and because it's going to be at Waverley again and the reserves had won, and because Hawthorn on top of the ladder, the reserves were going to be playing the curtain raiser again at Waverley. So trained, and then Thursday night got this phone call from Bob Moore saying congratulations, I've been selected to play with the firsts. You know, Bob Moore ringing up and being selected. No coaches rang up or captain or anything like that. It was really strange that the secretary just ring up and say, you know, you're in. And then within, well, in those days, no mobile phones or anything. I don't know how they got onto the number, but the Sun and the Age were onto the phone number, ringing up, and they had reporters out the front and down knocking on the door within half an hour. So yeah, well, obviously we let a couple of pictures, and you know, the questions of what do you think and how you think you're going to go and how you're going to play on Dench and all this sort of stuff, and I was sort of trying to probably deflect them a bit and just sort of saying, well, I'm very honoured to be able to be selected, and being a club that I'd always barracked for, and to be able to go and play for is just amazing. So it was exciting to you know, go into the dressing rooms, get changed and go out. It was a wet day, so I think the wet day suited me a bit, playing on David Dench. So I beat him, we kicked 4 goals, we won by about 12 points, so we're in the grand final. I remember Sandy Roberts coming down to the showers and interviewing me in the shower after the match. That's about the only thing I remember of after the match. And maybe coming back to the social club and having a couple of drinks with a few of the boys. And then training again, the reserves won, so they were progressed again to the preliminary final, which was at the MCG the next Saturday, and I played in it, and I didn't kick, I think I kicked about 4 or 5. I didn't kick a big bag, but we lost by about 4 goals, so that was that. And I think because I'd played in the game at VFL Park and I'd done alright, I sort of was already sort of half selected, I thought, really, for the grand final, and no one really spoke to me from the coaching group, or there really wasn't a coaching group, it was just Kanga. He never really talked to anyone much individually, but nobody really spoke to me at all, and there didn't seem to be any sort of plan of what to do, and everyone was still sort of, all that happened in grand final week was that on Thursday, and the teams were done, it was all about Crimo not getting in the team, and that pretty much went on all Friday night, Saturday morning, and probably I think the first time that Kanga would have spoken to the playing group would have been in the changing rooms as we were getting changed, and he brought us all together and talked about the little fella, and that, you know, he just didn't think it was right that he could play, and I think everyone was still had a lot more apprehension about it all, because you don't usually have, you know, nobody sort of was none of your friends died of cancer who were that young. We never heard of anyone, and someone who you're playing footy with who's fit, and just sort of seems such sort of an odd thing. And I'm sure a lot of the players would have been, you know, keen to have him in the team that day. Anyway, beautiful big day. Hawthorn, the senior teams, played one game that they've won in the last, I think it's 7 or 8 weeks, and it was in the wet, and here's a beautiful September day, and hardly played together really, and we sort of got jumped at the start, and just before half time, Normie Lord, who just passed away recently, he came out and said, "Come on, I want you to go off the ground." And Des Meagher came on for me, and I think Mike Moncrieff was in the back pocket, so he moved back up the forward line. And after half time, we actually went all right. And recently, I've seen the footage of the actual match, because in those days, no one ever had the whole match. You'd maybe had some footy replay on a Saturday night or a Sunday with the winners or something. But it was only little snippets of a match. It was never, you could never see a whole match. And I was amazed that at three-quarter time in that game, we were actually only about 10 or 12 points down at three-quarter time. So we were actually in the match in that grand final. So, but North, they ran over us in the last quarter and kicked quite a lot of goals as we probably sat back and still thought about Crimo. I brought my boots along, which are the boots I wore in the 75 grand final, and at the time Puma were sponsoring numerous players at Hawthorn, and Bomber Hendry and Peter Crimmins were integrally involved with Puma, and they'd measure up your foot a bit like fitting a mouth guard, and they made these boots out of kangaroo leather, and they're the most comfortable boots ever. Still had the old stops that the boot starter would be putting your new studs in every week, and I probably used these for the next at least 2 years after leaving Hawthorn, and they were the best footy boots I've ever had. They were fantastic. So sort of into the psyche of the team, and trying to forge friendships and relationships with the other players, and over the summer period, lots of basketball matches and teams we play with, and tennis and that sort of thing with players. And pre-season never started in those days till after Christmas, and January pre-season at Wattle Park, and running up and down the hills and stuff. And by the time that we started playing some practice games, and I felt probably the fittest I've ever been in my life, and stronger, and all those things that happened in the pre-season. And we played the last practice game against Melbourne at the MCG, and I absolutely crunched in a pack. I was sort of playing up sort of centre half forward way, because they were trying to, I think, change the ruck Scotty with Marty down the forward line or something like that. So I was sort of pushed up the ground a bit, but I got absolutely crunched and did a prolapse of my L4 on my back, which I didn't really know in those days what that was, but and just sort of struggled with referred pain down my leg and stuff pretty much the whole year, and trying to play in the reserves and not being able to bend down over below my knee. It was pretty stupid. I got an opportunity to go to Sydney. There was a new sports medicine clinic, the first one that ever appeared in Australia, called Lewisham Sports Medicine in Sydney. It was the very first one, and got an opportunity through the club to go up there and have some treatment for a couple of weeks, and went up there, and they seemed to be able to diagnose what was wrong and what rest I needed and what exercises, and it all improved a hell of a lot. And then pre-season again, and felt pretty good actually, best I'd felt for 9 or 10 months, and playing intra-club matches down at Crib Point, and Hutto decided to make a comeback. So I found myself in a practice game down at Crib Point playing full back on Hutto in an intra match that I'd never played full back in my life, and I thought I was a pretty good judge of the ball and a good mark, and I thought, oh well, I've got this one. And every time the ball would come down and I thought I was going to mark it, he had it. He's just a freak. It was unreal. So I got sort of semi-delisted, even though I was still on the training list. So I played my footy that year in A-grade amateurs with Uni Blacks. Played a couple of games for the Victorian amateurs, and still trained here at Glenferrie Oval. Still all the guys like Ricey and stuff, still it's all sort of mates then too. And the last, I can't remember if it was the last two games or the last game of the season that year. Same sort of thing. Uni Blacks didn't get in the final, so and the VFL was all much later. So I played, I think, the last 2 games in the reserves against Carlton and against Essendon, and that was it. So moved on and got convinced by some players at Old Carey to come back there the following year in '78 and sort of captain coach sort of thing. And it was all very well until nearly at the start of the seasons, when 3 of the guys that asked me to come back decided they'd go and play with Uni Blues in A grade. So we had a pretty disappointing year, and I was a bit pissed off with all that. So I moved up to the Dandenongs then, living in Sassafras, and decided, well, if I'm up here, I may as well go and play locally. So I wandered into Linda Footy Club and met some guys there, didn't know anyone, and I ended up signing up and playing there. And a guy called, I think his name in a minute, the coach, he was I really enjoyed it. Played there for 5 years. We won a 2nd division premiership, but the same as those, it was a real sort of country. It was a country town in the city, Olinda, and when the teams, South Croydon and East Ringwood and stuff, would come up there, and it was foggy, and some days it was snowing, and you really had a pretty good home ground advantage, even though it was playing in the mud. And that was really good because living up there, it's sort of like a country community, and you sort of get to know everyone around the whole place. So I lived up there for 20 years and doing a lot of building work. Did a building degree, started my own business, and I was doing a lot of started doing alpine building in about the same time, 78, 79, 80, building places at Mount Buller and Mount Hawthorn, and eventually got the opportunity to build the Dinner Plain village near Mount Hawthorn, and started that in '84, and probably worked there for 12 years. Put in an airstrip there, got my pilot's licence, and was flying up and down running that whole development. So that was, building all the infrastructure, all of the pub and about 60 houses. It was a big time of my life, very exciting time of my life, creating a whole village, and continued on doing a lot of that for the next probably 20 years, and just still running my building business, but doing it in Melbourne now, doing high-end residential houses, one a year, mate, basically. With footy though, I'd always end up in a pub somewhere at the end of my building season, up at Mount Hawthorn, for instance, and someone from Omeo says, "Oh, what about coming over a game?" So I played a season at Omeo. I've played a season at Benalla. I've played a season at from Mount Buller, at Bonnie Doon. I played a season at somewhere else too, can't remember. So I ended up playing other footy till I was probably about nearly 40. Just still enjoyed it. Didn't have any real trouble with my back until a bit later, and ended up having a laminectomy on my back that really fixed it up in the probably mid-90s, and never had any trouble with that ever since. So there's my footy career. Number 48 I was in the grand final, and next year in '76 I got 38, which is the jumper I still kept, but I never actually could keep the 48 for some reason. But it was interesting. I've done a lot of work with Indigenous kids, and we've done a lot of homestays for Hawthorn players that have been drafted from interstate, and they've stayed at our place for a year while we've looked after them. One of the players that came from Western Australia about 5 or 6 years ago was Carl Peterson, and Carl was came from the middle of the Western Australian desert. They found him on a sports day in Broome or something, where he was substitute high jumper, and at 14 he jumped 6 foot or something. Someone had this story about this kid jumping 6 foot, and he had the most amazing spring. But I looked up, he got the number 48, and I gave it to him when he got presented with it, and he played with that basically only played a year, but I managed to get him involved with building, and we got him registered as an apprentice. And with my business, he did two 2 full years of being an apprentice, and then we sort of fell out a little bit, and he wanted to go and work with someone else that played footy at Doncaster, and I had him playing footy at Old Carey, you know, grade we were in then, and he was a really, really good player. So since then he's actually finished his apprenticeship, and he's working as a carpenter. So it's very exciting because, you know, not many Aboriginal kids, Indigenous kids come that end up with something that they can look after their family with, and I think he's pretty proud about that he actually did it, you know, coming from somewhere where he had no idea about a city. Like, the city was just, you know, blew him away. Yeah, Robbie was probably a more athletic player than me, quite quick, fantastic spring, and being an older brother, 3 years older, and the fact that I could actually do the left foot kicking thing, you know, both feet. And when we used to have kick to kick in the park, I'd make him kick with his left foot. So he had that same attribute of being able to run off on either side. And, you know, you can see these days how important that is when you look at Sam Mitchell and stuff like that, you know, like a guy like that just kills them because you don't know which way to tackle him, which way he goes. So he was a bit like that. Used to take pretty exciting marks. I probably think he was very similar physique and player as what Bernie Quinlan was. Sort of like, that's a similar sort of player, but he had other interests. He was doing it. He could never seem to combine study and sport. Kanga used to say to us, there's 3 things. There's social life, and there's work or study, and there's footy. You can do 2, but you can't do 3. So there's quite a few boys at Hawthorn did the social life and the footy, but there's also quite a lot here that did the work and the footy. So Rob couldn't handle it all. He used to think about the footy all the time. So with his study, he had to concentrate on it. So his girlfriend and him just sort of, they drifted off, and they would do other things that he enjoyed. I think he probably regrets it I think he regrets it a lot that he didn't give it a bash. And later on, when I was playing at Olinda, he turned up one night to training, and he was running around the other side of the ground, and I thought, geez, I know, that looks familiar, and realised it was my brother. And we played there for a season, and he was playing at centre-half back, and he was kicking goals from centre-half back, unbelievable. He'd just get the ball, one bounce, bang, big torpedoes, just like Bernie Quinlan, straight through the goals. And he broke his collarbone in the final. And I don't know why collarbones then were such a big thing. These days they seem to put a plate on them or fix them quick. All those motorbike riders that smash all their collarbones. And David Parkin came and saw him play a game, because David was then coaching at Carlton, and Rob went down to Carlton to do a bit of pre-season, run around, and he re-broke the bloody collarbone down there about the second week he was there. So that was it. After 76, when I'd been injured, and I'd just come back from that Lewisham clinic thing I was telling you about, and I got invited to go on the trip away. And so we went on this trip to Bali and to Singapore and back. And I'd never been to Bali before, and I've never been since. There was 2 hotels. There was a Sanur Beach Hotel and a Hilton, I think, and Kuta Beach was a beach. It was just a beach, and it had a few galvanised iron lean-tos along it, and people selling magic mushrooms, and I remember, and everyone got little motorbikes to ride, and we were tearing around the island on these bloody motorbikes. Petsy and Ricey were riding along, and the road laws over there are that you got to give way to the left, not the right. So out of the left comes this Mercedes or something with the flag on it, and it's got one of the Indonesian generals in it, and she's going along the road, and I think the story goes that he was so pissed off about this fucking car, he was banging on the bonnet and stuff like this. I think he nearly got escorted to meet the plane at the airport for us to go to Singapore. And Ian Bremner must have hit his head. on the side or the bottom or something like that. And funny that it's Brem, you know, and I realised, and I used to be a swimmer, I used to swim in the state championships, and so I bloody dived in and got Brem off the bottom of the, he was just lying on the bottom of the pool, got him out, got him on his side and hit him, and the water came out, didn't have to do mouth to mouth, he started breathing. So I pretty much saved him, because there wasn't that many people around the pool. But it was funny that I saved him, because my first night of training here at Glenferrie Oval, we basically just do circle work, you know, kick the ball around, and every now and then the whistle would go and you'd go in and they'd want to do competitive circle work, so they'd have some jumpers there and they'd all put on another jumper, and then you'd line up on someone and then off you'd go, and you know, you'd be sort of on someone doing your circle work. And so Brem picked me up, because he obviously didn't know where I played and what I did, and one of the entanglements around the ground, he tackled me and landed flat on top of me, pushed all the air out of me. I was absolutely winded out. He's lying on top of me holding the jumper going, what position do you play, you know? And I said, forward line. And he let me up. So that's what it used to be a bit like, you know, you're trying to, you come in here as a new guy, and you're obviously trying to take someone's position, so there was a lot of you're not taking my position sort of thing happening. But in the end I ended up pulling him off the pool in Singapore. Yeah, Peter Wells, wow, what a guy. He was one of those really funny guys, prankster. Oh God, he came up with some funny things, and he was a live wire, and you just wanted to be around a guy like that. He one of the guys that, you know, gels the team together and creates the little jokes and all the little back talk things about Kanga and the coach and what they should be doing, and then he wouldn't have dared say it straight to his face and that sort of thing. But it was all funny. He was great. The other player that passed away since then, it didn't play in that year but started the next year. No, probably a bit after the next year, was David O'Halloran, who passed away 4 or 5 years ago. David and I were at North Melbourne Primary School together. He's been a friend for all our normal life basically, and that was a really big shock. And David was, stepping into the sort of full back position of it was the new Kelvin Moore, and so that's a really sad thing. His one. And who was the other one?
Des
Desi. Well, Desi took the place in the grand final at half time, so and he ended up being the assistant coach here at Hawthorn. Probably had not much to do with Desi, but he was a nice guy too, so played a lot of, it was on the end of his career when I came here, so he was one of the ones that came to North Melbourne Primary School when I was in grade 4 with Bob Keddy and I can't remember who the other one was that I mentioned before, that came and probably completely sealed the deal with me being a Hawthorn supporter.